4 teachers at Wenzhou University.
2 minutes early.
We teach in China. How many of you have been to China?
Oh, great.
That's amazing.
Okay. How many
Us too.
want to go to China? All right. Okay, so anyway, I'll tell you a little bit about our university, and then each one of us will share a different aspect of the digital learning that takes place there at Wenzhou. So my name is Dolores Gephart, and we have Svetlana and Jill and Jane, and
Hi.
they can introduce themselves when they speak. So mainly what I teach is business English, and our students are very business oriented and very entrepreneurial in their approach to learning. The city that we work in is called Wenzhou, and they're the very astute business people known all over the world as the backbone of overseas business. Like in Italy, 85% of the Chinese people that live in Italy are from Wenzhou. We have Italian import stores across the street from our university. So I can go over there. My family's Italian, so I can go over there and speak Italian with these Chinese, the local Chinese, who speak and have the cultural aspects of Italy. But anyway, just to talk about what I've been doing with my students is teaching a business English course, and it's a junior level course, and they learn like business correspondence and things like this. But the major component of the course is a business plan and business proposal. So I'll go over some of these aspects.
Just hit the button one more time. Just hit the cursor one more time.
What are things on now?
Keep going. Just hit it one more time. The cursor. There you go.
So mainly, we work on CVs, cover letters, and we do simulated interviews, so the students will dress up in business clothes. And then 3 of the students will be on the interview panel, and another one will be the person being interviewed. So they love doing this. And then we do afterwards like a speed dating scenario with 2 rows of chairs, and then the one rotates in which they get to answer multiple questions, but then they'll just have dialogue with the person across from them, but it changes. So it's an exciting experience for the students. Then we work on business correspondence, how to do formal letters, emails, and things like this. And then the business proposal and project, which takes up about, I would say, 40% of the class. And then they design a brochure to go with their business concept. So what the aspect is, they have to come up with a problem on campus that they can identify and make a proposed business solution. So part of this is their questionnaire to develop the background information that they need from the students on campus or on other Chinese universities. So they utilize QQ and WeChat. I guess if you're familiar with China, you know everything runs on WeChat. You know, everything, finances, whatever. So QQ, WeChat, Weibo, to send approximately 15 question survey. The QQ format takes the data and interprets it into charts and graphs. Then the WJX.cn, Wenjian Xing, is also a questionnaire platform. So QQ and WeChat are platforms developed by Tencent. Maybe some of you have heard of Tencent. And of course, those are only 2 of the platforms, but 2 that we use the most. So QQ, they send out the questions, and the students all participate. So mostly the juniors, because they all know each other, but some of them freshmen, sophomores, and seniors too. So they can personalize everything on QQ, and same thing with WeChat. And then this is the WJX site, and it's almost all in Chinese, but we could get onto this translated page with the students use the questionnaire on here. And it's also an online exam making tool. So these are some of the kind of questions that the students come up with and some of their ideas. The beginning parts of the questionnaire is mostly demographics, what gender, what grade level are you? Also, what kind of interests do they have in the actual problem? Can they identify it as something that the students are really interested in? And then also if they're interested in their ideas of their solutions. So just to give an example, one's Easy Travel. So this is a WeChat platform for rental of electric bikes with students leasing to others. So some of them have bikes, which a lot of us teachers, we have the electric bikes too. But then others don't, and there's really no way to get off campus that's convenient for them. So they were proposing having this bike rental system, which they do have at some of the other universities in China. So they wanted to do a platform for that. So some of the questions they came up with is, what is your usual way of transportation to Chasan or Mixi? Those are nearby cities involved. If WKU set up an online system for electric vehicles lending, would you be interested in it? So they have to consider various aspects of the business too. One thing I mentioned to them, what about insurance and injuries and this kind of things, but they have the idea anyway. Now, men, I thought was kind of interesting. So they came up with this idea of having an app called Men, which you use, and you do not use other social media platforms. So it's sort of like maybe the Alcoholics Anonymous of social media, because our students are very absorbed in social media, and they have to keep up with it all the time. And it's almost like an addiction. So the thing is, they were saying, propose this, once you join this app, then you can't participate in your other social media sites while you're participating in this app. And this is another one called Floratown. Have a WeChat business to order flower delivery, such as a carnation a day. Problem, there's no floral shop or campus or anywhere nearby. So I think the students like to have this custom with sending flowers to each other. So some of the questions they have were on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you evaluate the need for a flower shop? How often do you need these products? Another one was a spa. They have it near campus with nails and spa facials in nearby apartment complex. The problem, there's no spa or nail service in the city where WKU is. Some other ideas they have for a fitness kitchen, for a healthy food service. So WKU has high fried oil and poor quality cafeterias and limited hours. So they have a good idea, and they study other universities to see how they have successfully done these type of businesses. And they have the idea to have like what they call Taobao or takeaway food service, but having healthy products like salads and fresh vegetables and things. And I already talked about Men. And then High Speed, have a WeChat study room reservation app where they can reserve an area on campus where they can study. And then X-Trans, this has been very popular at other universities, and they have a flea market at the end of the semester, and then they can sell their books and clothing and whatever they have. But it would all be done online, and you would set everything up in payment that way too. And then another group had this, they have high stress. Our students really, really study hard for their examinations, and they're really under a lot of stress. So they have this Banana Stress Management Center where they have a relaxation center offering counseling. And the Banana Stress Management, they have like different things that they can use in their hands and toys. So just to talk a little bit about the business plan. So these are the components of the business plan, which they all participate in. I won't go into all the depth of all of them, but they have to design a cover letter, a title page, table of contents, list of figures, abstract, and then executive summary. So with the executive summary, they can use this to apply for a business project. So we have that going on between Wenzhou in China and Payne University in New Jersey, so they can participate in this business project. And they actually have cash awards. And then the actual business plan itself, the introduction, the model. They do a consumer analysis. They interpret their research findings. They develop an operating plan. They have a financial summary, which a lot of them enjoy the financial summary aspect a lot because most of them are in business or finance. And then any projections or recommendations. Anyway, I have some samples that you can see if you're interested. I brought them. So they have this, these were done with the WeChat app, which they project the same type of things that we have with some of our programs. So anyway, these programs, and then this was the brochure they developed for easy travel. So you could, if you want to later, you can come up and see some of the projects the students did.
Okay guys, so my name is Svetlana, and I usually go by Lana because it's so hard to pronounce my full name. And I will talk about coca and word and phrase, and I would like to ask you two simple questions, just show of hands. So the first one, have you ever heard about coca as corpus of contemporary American English and word and phrase? Wonderful, perfect. Okay, have you ever used it though for your teaching? Okay, a bit fewer hands. Okay, good, perfect. So what I'd like to do today, I would like to introduce coca and word and phrase very briefly, and after that I will show you a few examples what I do with my students and which activities they actually find pretty useful. So the first thing, and the most important, what is corpus, by the way? What is corpus? Anyone?
Body of knowledge.
Okay, so we have knowledge.
Body of something.
Okay, body of something.
It's the text that you're going to analyze.
Okay, so basically all the text. Perfect. Okay. Are those written, spoken?
No, I mean, well, it's written, but I mean, you might have transcripts of spoken English.
Okay. Okay. So, according to my dearest professor, Professor Randy Redman, so corpus is a large principled collection of texts, and as you said correctly, could be written, could be spoken, and they stored electronically. So this is the interface of coca, and well, unfortunately, to use it, you have to register for just in order to, well, you can have 10 to 15 searches free of charge, but if you want to get more of the searches, you kind of have to pay. So this is the interface, and you have 5 different options how to choose and how to search for the information. And specifically, I will talk about list and collocates for today because those are kind of the most useful, and those are the ones that I use personally, and my students use those pretty often. So, if you use list, that option is really wonderful to search for just single words. That's just the most simple thing that you can do. Also, I'm trying to teach my students not just single words, but also collocations. We're not learning single words, but learn those in chunks, right? Also, if you're teaching your students prefixes and suffixes, it also could be a good idea to use coca and list to introduce word families. Also, list is an amazing way to search for synonyms because we ask students, please paraphrase. This is your, just write summary response, paraphrase. But how should they do it if they have very limited amount of vocabulary, right? So that's why this is pretty useful for that. Collocates, you can search for words that occur around your target word and they go up to 9 words on each side. So those 2 are the most useful, I would say. Okay, and I'm going to specifically talk about list and collocates. the most simple search you can do, this is a random word that I'm teaching right now for my students. Let's say support. All you have to do, just type the word, click find, and this is it. I mean, you use it, you've seen it, and this is a cool thing. This could be a nice icebreaker for the students, because this way they can go ahead and check, so support, is there a verb, is there a noun? Also, let's say you're teaching the word flabbergasted. Some of the students don't really know what the word flabbergasted is, so they can go to Hoelker, check it out, and try to figure out what the meaning is. So that could be a very nice beginning of the introduction of the word. Okay, so for more complicated searches, you need to use wildcards and POS. POS?
Point
Part of speech.
You got it. I don't have candies. I'm sorry, I will give you one. Next time I'll bring one. Okay, so the one that I usually use is an asterisk, and POS is a part of speech. So asterisk could be used in different ways. If you put it right next to the word, that could search for suffixes or prefixes, depending on where you put it. And also, if you put it separately, that could search for a word or a punctuation mark. So you can teach, let's say students don't really know sometimes, do we have to use comma before because or not, right? You can send them to Hoelker and let them check. So POS is a really cool thing for students to remind them, what's a noun, what's a verb, what's an adjective, and how do we use those all? This is a good reminder. Okay, now moving forward to more complicated searches, as I have already mentioned, let's say you have the word demonstrate, which is a root, and you're adding the asterisk right next to it, and all we have to do, click search, and then you'll be able to see different prefixes. Let's say demonstrate, demonstration, etc. That could be nice. So maybe you can introduce that. Students learn that for a while, and then you play the game. Who can remember more prefixes or suffixes? So that could be a good one as well. If you have the asterisk kind of with a space, that can search, again, as I have mentioned, for whatever words or punctuation marks. That kind of seems pretty useless right now, because it's like, okay, demonstrate that, what does it give us? In some situations, that could give you a lot. Let's say you are searching for prepositions, right? You can just put an asterisk, preposition and whatever word. But in this particular case, it's not really useful. But if you make it more specific, let's say you want to know what nouns go straight after demonstrate. So you choose here, you have POS, you choose noun, click search, and then here we go. Now you're teaching not only demonstrate, but you're teaching collocations, right? Demonstrate knowledge, demonstrate understanding, demonstrate competence, which is a cool way for students to enlarge their vocabulary that they are missing sometimes. Okay, moving on to synonyms. All we have to do is to put the equal sign right before the word that you're searching and click find. Here I have the list of all those synonyms that are the synonyms of demonstrate, but you have to be kind of careful and very analytical in terms of your finding, because here we go. You already have the word demonstrate right here, right? But the majority of the words pretty much reflect the synonyms that you are searching. And the most fascinating thing for me, if you click on the S, let's say you're searching for the synonyms of reveal, you click on S, and here you have a new list of words that are the synonyms of reveal. And you can go ahead and just move forward and just create this tree of synonyms. Okay, so here is a really personal story. I'd like to share with you the situation that happens every single semester with me and my students. They always say, oh, I would like to learn some knowledge about English. Learn the knowledge. So what we do, we go to Hoelker, I ask them to use collocates. We're searching for knowledge and whatever words that occur before knowledge, like 4 spaces, let's say, and we're searching in academic settings specifically. So not in spoken, but in academic setting. So, it's like we have, students, please check it out. We don't really have learn here. So we have, we have acquire, we have gain. No learn, please. The smartest ones, they do the following. They go to, again, collocates, they type knowledge, they type learn, they click search. Teacher, you're wrong. You see? Yeah, 86 instances of 82. It's like, sure, but did you actually go ahead and read them? And here's the teaching moment. Is it too small? No? You can? You can see it? So that they learn that knowledge. This is not really the collocation of learn knowledge, or learn to take that knowledge, right? So here we go, like, you know what? I win. I'm sorry about that. Well, frankly, actually you can find that learn the knowledge, but it kind of omits that part. But because it's not really grammatical to say learn knowledge. But anyway, that happens every single semester. Like, okay, we're gonna go through that anyway. All right, so word and phrase is pretty simple. There are only 3 slides for you guys. So this is the interface, and it's absolutely free. You don't need to register for that. So that's basically Hoelker. I would say Hoelker is the mama, and word and phrase is the daughter, I would say, or whatever. So all you have to do, you have to click input and analyze text. And here we go. Let's say you have the same word, demonstrate. You type the word, you click search, you type this here again, and then you have a nice profile for one word. So you have definitions, you have a few collocations, you have examples, and you have synonyms that are nicely organized according to the meaning. Right? So explain or protest. So that's pretty useful, and moreover, students see that where it is used more often. Is it academic? Is it spoken? So they can, that can tell them a lot whether it's useful or not for their writing. The majority of students like word and phrase, but still I have a few students who really like Hoelker because it's complex and it gives them more options to choose and search. That's why I would say it's a safe thing to introduce both websites and let them choose themselves. But both work for my students. Okay, so now I would like to talk about activities that I usually do with my students. And the objectives of those activities reflect the roles students can have or can take in the classroom. So the biggest one is the discovery researcher. Then we have the hypothesis testers and error correctors. So I would like to introduce you those roles through my tree. Okay, so since we come from Asia, and we're gonna check your discovery skills, so could you please name a few fruits here? So what's this?
Cherry.
Good job. How about this one?
Mango.
Okay, mango, could be guava, but guava is more like greenish. Greenish. Could be papaya, but it's not that. Okay, this one is like, ugh.
Durian.
Okay, do you like durian?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Very good.
Depends. Okay, so here we have a fruitful tree, and I would say as educators, right, we really would like to introduce different kinds of activities so students can be more engaged and more interested in what are you doing in class. So therefore, a few fruit. Okay, so moving on to cherries. Good job, guys. So the first thing I do with my students kind of to introduce to Hoelker and word and phrase, I give a very simple paragraph to read. And that paragraph is kind of, I can relate to that, because the student in the journal is writing about the amount of homework the amount of hours he or she has to spend on one assignment. So students, if I can relate to that, because I was a student, students can relate to that too. All they have to do, they read it and they analyze it on very simple, basic, base. They have to read it, and if they have any words that they don't know, or a grammatical structure or pattern they kind of not really sure about, they basically write a search question. For example, so how do you sew in academic writing? Or what is the definition of underline? Or whatever. They decide what they don't know and what they would like to search through word, phrase, and COCA. And after that, they collaborate together through Google Document, and they create a bank of questions. So that's there. They're trying to figure out what they want to know. And after that, you can, make it a bit prettier, I would say. Or you can just leave it as it was. And after that, you may give your students, or I give them, the table. And then the table, they have to complete 5, maybe to 7 questions. They have to find those questions that they wrote together as a class. And they choose either they search it at a COCA or a word and phrase, and they have to describe their finding. Let's say they chose how to use focus on in academic writing. And here we go, the finding, so kind of they describe, so focus on is followed by a noun, or an adjective noun, or a noun and phrase. After that, they have to create their own example sentence. And after completing all those 5 or 7, and they're very excited about it, they bring it to classroom and they exchange with their peers. So the reason why, and the peer is reading the finding, reading the example, and like, oh, I like it. Like, oh no, that sounds not correct. And the reason why I'm doing this, as we'll know, Whole Nation mentioned that in order to remember the word, you have to notice it or see it at least 12 times. Right? It's hard to learn a new language, right? And for students, especially in academic setting, it kind of gives them this opportunity to see those words again and again. So that's pretty cool activity. After that, you can introduce texts that come from your textbook. And in this way, when they see the grammatical patterns, when they see the words, I always hope that they can use that later on in their own writing. So kind of make their choices more authentic. Okay, moving on to another cherry activity. That's the task that is related to searching the synonyms, right? I already mentioned that we always ask our students to paraphrase. And a good way to help them with that is to use a graphic organizer. And they love this activity. I have no idea why, but they love it. They have words in bold, and they have to start with that word, search for 2 synonyms, and then 2 more synonyms for whatever synonym is they found. And they just can grow those trees, kind of enlarging their vocabulary. That's just an example for them, and then they do it as the homework or in-class activity, in class. Another fun thing that I have realized, and I'm doing, like all of us probably for our students, we create vocabulary quizzes. And of course, students are very excited about them. Sure thing. I usually use the collocation, please enjoy the quiz. And like, yes, thank you very much. So all you have to do, it's the task 5, it's a bonus activity. Students love it because it's an extra credit. They have to, they have the word and they have to write 2 collocations. And we learn those collocations during the classes, so they already know what I want from them. Let's say they have the word accent, they have to give me 2 collocations with the word accent.
Accent, foreign accent, strong.
Foreign accent, strong accent, a bit thick accent, right? And then,
color.
huh?
Color.
Mm.
Accent color.
Accent color. Okay, no.
Interior design. You use an accent color.
Okay, but I was more related to linguistics. But thank you for the collocation. I will check that in Coca, see how it works. And then they choose the one that they like most, and they write a sentence with that. Simple as that. I tell my students, please do not start with that activity. And I see it all the time. They start with that activity because, okay, I have a bonus point, just in case. And then they start with the quiz itself. But, yeah, wrong decision. Okay. Moving on to the fact that graphic organizers are amazing not only just for the text comprehension. Many researchers tell us, okay, that's really cool for text comprehension, but it's also amazing for vocabulary retention and remembering the words. So you can use Venn diagrams to compare how to use, let's say, little and small. You also can do 2 columns. Let's say you have the word impact and impact, and students might write, sentences and see how those are used. Or you can also use the table. You can ask students to write collocations, synonyms, and examples, let's say with the same words. Spider maps work wonderfully as well. The word target could be a noun, could be a verb. You might write synonyms or collocations as a noun, or synonyms, collocations as a verb. So basically, they're doing the same thing, but the way how you introduce that is a bit different, right? We need variety in our classrooms, and that's why graphic organizers work wonderfully with that. Okay, moving on to mango, I guess. Here we go. So hypothesis testers, you can give students completed sentences or maybe incomplete, like this. So studying abroad can facilitate my what? Right? They basically they are trying to guess what could be facilitated by my what. Right? And after that, after they guess after they hypothesized, they go to Coca and they check whether they were right or right. And again, those could be complete sentences. Let's say you have a sentence and you bold one word. What are the synonyms of this word? And again, they guess, they go and check to Coca word and phrase. So that works very well, and that could be a very quick exercise at the beginning of the class, or if you have a few minutes at the end of the class, that could work too. Again, reviewing the vocabulary. So moving on to my favorite durian. I love it. So those of you who don't like it, I have no idea why you don't. It's so good. Okay, Eric correctus. This is the fun activity because my students in my class, they have to write journals. And after I read the journals, I kind of write down the errors that occur frequently. And that's it. I write those sentences with the errors. I go to Coca, I find the correct sentence, and here we go. Again, teaching moment. You can ask students to train their honesty, cover the right answer with a hand or with their phone if they have it. They go through the sentence, they read it, and they have to try, they are trying to find the error themselves. And then I was like, oh, I know the answer. Oh, bummer, not really. Okay, so they find the answer, they check themselves, and they have to create the sentence at the end and compare that with the partner. And you can include like 1 or 2, usually have around 5-ish examples for them. And it's a cool activity. They laugh they like it, they laugh all the time. So it could be a nice variation for your classroom. So again, moving on to benefits, I hope that I persuaded you that Coca with the phrase is amazing for vocabulary boost, and as well as grammar, and overall understanding how English works, just overall being aware of the English language. And of course, remember with the example I gave you about learn knowledge, you have to be critical about your findings, right? You just cannot take it for granted. You have to go ahead and check it out. Otherwise, it doesn't work like that. Also, as educators, guys, please use graphic organizers. It's just a really cool activity. Just put them, ask them to go and draw the graphic organizer and complete the activity. Also, again, my hope is for them to become more independent, because I bet if figured out that I'm not a native speaker. I'm from Russia, And while I was studying in the United States, I used cocoa phrase all the time. It helped me. That's why my hope is to help my students. And I had a small survey with my students last semester when I introduced that cocoa phrase at the beginning of the semester in September. Of course, none of them knew what cocoa phrase were. And in November, I asked them a simple, very question. Do you guys use cocoa phrase in other classrooms? In other, whatever, writing classes you have, whatever. And it was anonymous, so I didn't care. Like, they could write no, I don't use it. But actually they did. And they used collocations and synonyms, exactly what I wanted from them, exactly what I used cocoa and word and phrase for. Therefore, there is a hope that they can make more authentic choices, become better writers, and ultimately better speakers. So thank you very much. These are the references. If you want to take a picture, you can. Other than that, I would like to introduce the next speaker.
Can you put the references?
Sure, I'm sorry.
And also, the PDF of this is available in the app.
Oh, it's on the app for the
Yeah.
whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Jill Robbins.
I picked up one of the habits of our students is putting your talk on your phone. So I'm no longer working at WKU, but I was there last year and was the ESL coordinator for the fall semester. So I'm going to be talking about meeting college level discourse goals. Our students come in to this English medium university from Chinese high schools, of a lot of different varieties of high schools, but predominantly they come from Zhejiang province, and they don't have to have any particular English level to enter the university. So it's kind of a shock when they come into these classes and the teachers are asking them to write an essay with sources from professional journals. They've been used to writing pretty personal, opinionated type of essays in high school. They've never had to back up their opinions with facts. So kind of like our current administration here. The idea of doing academic writing the way that we would, conceptualize it is totally new, and the idea of using sources to back up, what you want to say is totally new. So the tools that I want to talk about have to do with digital citation and research, with grammar and plagiarism checking. The first one I want to talk about is Zotero. How many of you are familiar with Zotero? You heard of this application? It's a research management tool, and it allows students to save references and automatically, this is the amazing part, it automatically generates in-text citations and a beautiful bibliography that's in alphabetical order, yay, and APA style, or MLA style if you prefer that. So once my students figure out what Zotero can do for them, they're like, wow, this is saving hours and hours of tedious work. So they are very happy to figure this out. It starts by plugins. It integrates with the Chrome or Firefox browsers. And that, again, is another learning curve for our students because many of them are using, say, a QQ browser or that terrible thing that I like to call Internet Exploder, the worst browser on the planet. Zotero doesn't work with either of those. So you have to have Chrome, and the students actually may not be too familiar with Chrome and the Google apps because they require a VPN to access in China. So they have to have one of those browsers, and then once they've installed the plugin, there's a little button that they can click, and that automatically captures whatever is in that particular window. It could be, a professional journal article, or a blog post, or a YouTube video, or any kind of content that's online. And then once it's in the desktop app for Zotero, that feeds into Microsoft Word or LibreOffice, open source Office, or Google Docs to generate the citations and the bibliographies. And so you just go to Zotero.org, you can read all about it. They have nice videos on there and a lot of really good documentation you can share with your students. So I did a survey of the students that were in my classes, and they shared it with some of their friends in other classes. I asked them about the usefulness of some of these apps that I was teaching them about. And 45% found that Zotero was highly useful in creating their research essays. And as you can see, 28 and 21%, found it moderately useful. Then I mentioned that there was kind of a learning curve, and so I asked, well, how hard was it to learn Zotero if you used it? And so the response to that was, it was moderately easy or hard, depending on which way you look at it. But the struggle was worth it, because they were then able to plug in these nice citations. The next tool is Grammarly. How many of you have seen Grammarly? I'm sure that you've seen the ads on the web. The thing about Grammarly is it is a paid application for certain functions. But don't tell anybody, but I just gave my students my login, so they can use those functions. It'll check things like the spelling, punctuation, grammar, of course, but also style, and the target audience of the writing. For the vocabulary, it looks to see if you're using the same word over and over again, so for a variety of vocabulary. It also looks at the register, your target register. Is this formal writing or informal writing? And it'll let you know, well, this sounds too informal, a lot of, for example.
Can I use this to grade my students' papers?
You've figured out one of my strategies from
That's
going
possible?
faster. You can, if you have the student's paper in visual form, you can drop it into your Grammarly, and it'll find all the mistakes for you.
You win TESOL
And-
conference this year. You win. You just won it for me right there.
Not only that, it will tell you which sources they copied.
Oh.
It has a plagiarism checker built in. Now, how many of you guys use Blackboard? Yeah, so on Blackboard, you have Safe Assign and also Turn It In, right? So the problem with the Safe Assign is that a student has to submit the essay on Blackboard, and then they get a Safe Assign score. But I think that they may not always be able to see all the details, like the teacher can see the details in Safe Assign. With Grammarly, before they even submit the paper, they can check it and see whether it's going to be acceptable or not. So they can see, for example, which sources precisely they didn't paraphrase well enough from the plagiarism checking. The style and the goal settings that you can put in as you're working on Grammarly, they, I believe, help students to learn the academic register. So, they'll things like vocabulary or structures will be highlighted if it doesn't match their target register. And then spell checking. Oh, thank goodness, spell checking saves a lot of time. And it makes the teacher's job easier. Here's an example So this was a sample cause and effect essay, and I just tweaked it and changed the, some of the words just so you can see how they're highlighted. And then there's a button that you can click over on one side that is a plagiarism checker. It says, comparing your essay to, 5 billion, articles online or whatever. And then it tells you, it gives you the URL of the location of the online text that's been copied. So it's very nice. I don't, do you use Blackboard or Turnitin or anything like that? No. And then the last tool I want to talk about is library research. How many of you do library orientations for your students? Okay. How about ProQuest? Do you teach them to use ProQuest? A little bit? ProQuest used to be university microfilms, I found out. So when I got my doctorate way, in the last century, it was, I had to send a copy to university microfilms and they, archived it. So, they've kind of built off of that corpus. They've built off of that corpus and they've added, all kinds of scholarly journals, and it's a really great way to find articles that you can use for research reports. Students had to learn how to use a library instead of Baidu, which is their go-to, Chinese search engine, or just Google without the Scholar tools. I did teach them to use Google Scholar in addition to the library search. And I also taught them about Wikipedia. A lot of them, you put something into Google and the regular Google, and it comes up with Wikipedia as the first hit. How many of you know about the sources lists in Wikipedia, right? You just go to the bottom of the page and there's all of the original references. And I teach my students, okay, if you can't find anything in the library, go to Wikipedia, find the article, and then look at all those articles that they found. And often, there's sometimes you'll run into something that's no longer being published. But in most cases, you'll find things that are still readily available online. Students have 2 libraries that they can access. One is the school's library there in Wenzhou, and it has a lot of ebooks. It doesn't have very many paper books, but a lot of ebooks. It doesn't have the ProQuest, so they use the Kane Library, which is in New Jersey. So, how do we teach about it? They get a 90-minute orientation to library research in the summer orientation session. And then through the fall semester, the ESL teachers and composition teachers require students complete a task that necessitates that they do some library research. So I asked my students, well, which of the tools that you used for research were you using? And primarily they said Zotero and Grammarly were very helpful to them. Microsoft Word and Ulysses. Ulysses is a writing tool that actually checks grammar also. And it's a paid app. Their overall evaluation, they showed that, oops, okay. They showed them that, well, they really liked Google Scholar. One student said they used the library, the local library, and the Kane Library. But Grammarly and Zotero then came in second for Google Scholar, overall for them being able to create academic research papers. Okay. And the cost of Grammarly is about $60 a year. But there is a free version that students can access. So now I'd like to introduce the last of our colleagues, Jane Hoelker.
Okay, just show me. Okay, well, I'm very excited to be here today and talk to you about Quizlet and vocabulary acquisition, which has become an interest of mine the last few years. Quizlet is a fun way to learn vocabulary. I'll just ask you 3 true-false questions, and just in your mind, hold your answer, is it true or false? Native English speakers learn about 3,000 new words annually from grades 1 to 12. True or false?
False.
Number 2. At the end of 8th grade, the average student knows about 25,000 words. True or false? And at the end of 12th grade, they know 50,000 words. True or false? Okay, so number 1, your answer? Take a guess.
False.
False? No, it's true. Yes. Okay. Number 2?
I'm gonna say false.
False. It's true. Okay. And you, please.
You have a citation, it has to be true.
Yes. That's right. I had to look up that citation. Yeah. So they're all true. So what I realized after doing some reading about vocabulary acquisition, this is really a daunting task that we are faced with and that our students face. So we have to help them more than we were helping them. What is the difference between a good reader and a reader who struggles? It is vocabulary. That helps our students read and improve their reading comprehension. So as a result of some of this research, when I was in Qatar, currently I'm in China, before this I was in Qatar, colleagues and I started sharing good practices. And we evolved a number of techniques and approaches to teaching vocabulary. Now the students complained because we prepared a handout sheet first. We were working with A4 paper, and we put the vocabulary word, the part of speech, model sentence, definition in English. They get 20 words every 2 weeks, and they complained bitterly about this workload. But we persisted because there were 2 of us, so we could fight them off. And you know, when we were in quarter system then, we moved to the new quarter, we got a new class, and there was a knock at my door one afternoon. They said, "Oh, hi, Miss Jane, how are you?" And I said, "Fine." And they said, "Well, we just stopped by to say hello. We really miss you. And by the way, do you have any extra copies of those vocabulary sheets?" Because the new teacher didn't believe in teaching vocabulary. So that made me feel really good. We were having success with that, and they were realizing how it benefited them. So we then moved on to using vocabulary cards. We got the idea of using cards. So we would have a vocabulary word like displace, and we find an attractive cartoon on the internet and download that. And on the reverse side of the card, we would put the part of speech, the definition in English, model sentence, but we worked on the sentence so that the meaning was repeated in the sentence, not an easy sentence like, "It's too sad to be displaced," or something like that. And what I gradually realized one day when I was working, printing out a PowerPoint, is that you could print out 6 slides horizontally. And what you could do is type the vocabulary words in the left column and all the information about the word in the right. The students receive the copy, they cut it into 3 parts, and they can paste it on small palm cards. And they really got into this. They started decorating their cards. They would use only red for the verbs, no matter what the chapter was, and blue for the nouns, and then sometimes the chapters would be color-coded, so chapter 1 was all the blue cards. They began to decorate them, and I got the idea to paraphrase sentences in the exercise books to, recycle the vocabulary. And I noticed that when we'd open a book and start doing an exercise, they were looking, they reached into their purses, pulled out the vocabulary cards, and they were looking for the sentence that matched. So they thought they were tricking me. They thought they were finding an easy way to get the answer to the question, but I was tricking them into doing a little bit of review. So that was a nice development. Research. I did 2 surveys. I'll just share 2 questions, 2 results from the survey with you. There were 13 questions altogether. 21 students were surveyed spring 2014, 20 in fall 2015. So I asked, did the chapter vocabulary handouts with parts of speech, model sentences and definitions in English help you learn the new vocabulary well? And how did it help? So the vast majority agreed they were very helpful. And the responses were interesting. They said, it makes reading easy to learn, to study, and I can know it quickly. Makes it easy to study. So this idea of quickly, automaticity, it's something they never experienced with vocabulary or with English before. When I want to write a story or when I speak with someone, I can use any word. So again, automaticity is being fostered. Finally, are you better at using English in your job after studying this class? Because we were teaching working girls. They worked during the day, at night they went to school. If they passed, they got a bigger paycheck. So they're very motivated at doing this. So one girl wrote, I'm getting better than before. Now I'm writing wonderful professional emails with great grammar. So we see student confidence is building, and student confidence, I think, is about the most important ingredient towards success. So I began to realize that intentional instruction of vocabulary is very important. We cannot rely upon incidental instruction, which we've been doing for many, many years, also in foreign language instruction. I'm a non-native French speaker, so sometimes I can really understand what the students are going through studying English. Okay, setup. So now I've adjusted to using Quizlet, and I'm working with another teacher partner, sharing ideas and practices in doing this. So students select 3 vocabulary words out of the reading chapter that we're doing that week, and they type it up. I give them a form because otherwise it would be hand scribbled on a torn piece of paper. So they have to put again the same information, the vocabulary word, part of speech, definition, model sentence. Then I create a folder on Quizlet, and I input the students' selections. I download a visual from Quizlet or the internet, and I activate the pronunciation option. So here's the picture setup. You can see the vocabulary word, the information, a visual, and there's a little icon for the pronunciation. And they really like the pronunciation practice. There we go.
Do you do the pronunciation yourself or does somebody do it?
It's automatic.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, it's great, yeah. So this is really a fun part. This encourages independent learning. I get a report on the class progress. Have they practiced all the activities? I pay a little bit of extra money a year. I think it's $30, $31, something like that, but it's really worth it. So you have the student's name. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 practice sessions. They have, well, small print here, learn the flashcards that flip. They write, so they have to practice writing, spelling, and then they have a test. And the test is pretty good. They have a matching test, fill in the blank, short answers, true, false. And then they have 2 games. They have the matching game. So you have the words and the definitions sort of moving around on the screen, and they have to drag the correct word on top of the definition or vice versa. But when they do this, they're being timed over here, how many seconds it takes them to do it. So they get kind of excited about that. And then the gravity is the red asteroid hitting Earth. So you have a word on the asteroid that's coming down to destroy Earth, and they have to quickly type in the meaning. Again, they're being timed over here. So they like that. And there is, added here at the very end, another game, new this year, Quizlet Live. And it's a whole game activity. They break into teams, and I haven't done this before with them. So after about 3 or 4 weeks of vocabulary acquisition, we'll do it with that'll be 3 or 4 lessons of vocabulary. Okay. So here's what your folder looks like. You have the games. The other students can click on the games there. Okay. And this is a repeat. Somehow that happened. moving along. In-class interaction motivates. I discovered that they needed some support in the classroom for studying. So this activity has been mentioned in so many sessions that I've been in at this conference. But it's the idea, Dee, you mentioned it too. You have 2 rows of students facing each other. They take turns as teacher and student and quiz each other. And I tell them to practice questions they didn't expect. Like they're used to saying, here's the word, tell me what it means. So I say instead, ask them, how do you spell it? And they have to spell a word. And that's not so easy. And today I was at a wonderful session on how to teach spelling. I think it was at 11:30. And I'm going to try some of those activities to support their learning of spelling. What word matches this definition? So they hear the definition, they have to say the word. Or the model sentence with a blank. Fill in the blank with the correct vocabulary word. So I call this the English train. Today we're going to Shanghai, or Beijing. And the first student in one row moves to the rear, and everyone moves up. I think every EFL teacher knows this game. So I began to think, why is Quizlet so successful? I talked to my partner that I'm working with, and we talked about it a while, but of course, the theory of gamification is just, really becoming very popular. So I ordered Chu's book. I think he's the best reference. Everybody goes to him. All the other books are just a knockoff of his theory. And he defines gamification as the act of making something game-like, or the craft of deriving fun and engaging elements found typically in games and thoughtfully apply these to productive activities. So as he explains it, prior to about this time in our evolution of teaching English, everything was functional. It's all based on the factory model the last 300 or 400 years. So he calls it the function-focused design. But now we're interested in the human motivation design. And this is the key difference with previous approaches to education. By the way, Quizlet is found in Coxhead's book, which is one of the New Ways publications by TESOL. So you may want to take a look at that book. Bibliography, there's my bibliography, a few articles, Coxhead's book, Chu's books, and I also have in there, Teaching Vocabulary, published by TESOL, another book. Graves, they have a lot of wonderful research and statistics in there. So thank you very much. I think we're all open to questions now. Yes, sir.
Can they do Quizlet on their phone?
Yes, they can. There's an app they can download. Yes, thank you for asking that. Yeah. Yes.
I've seen Quizlet quizzes, but I myself have never made one. When you say you're putting in their stuff, you mean like you're typing it in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't take long. If I found out that if I get them to submit the information, it only takes me about 40 or 45 minutes to input it. So I input, I have 2 classes. I take 10 words from one class, 10 to another. I put it in one folder, and that'll be 20 words, and that'll last us for 2 weeks. I went to Ely Hinkle's presentation last year on vocabulary acquisition, and she said research now is showing it takes a lot longer to master vocabulary, and that means more than just an English definition, how to use it correctly, the collocations, etc. She says it's 1 word a day. However, she makes her students learn 10 words a day. Yes, Dee?
To get that Quizlet word list, what I do is I get the words that are in the book or, in the readings, all these words that they're coming across, and then I make a whole list. And then I put it up on the board, and then I get groups in the classroom, and they're responsible for finding the definitions. Then the next class we have, they put them up on the board, and that way I don't have to do all that work, and they're engaged in doing it.
But the definitions are already there in
It
Quizlet.
goes quick. I think it's the quickest way
Well,
to teach.
I research it because I wanted, like before, I'm referring to the textbook, and I might paraphrase or semi-paraphrase something in there because the book, the Pearson series, some of that's high academic stuff. Sometimes I reinforce the meaning in the sentence by having 2 parts of the sentence. But I found if I had them do the initial research and give me you know, the word and all that information. I just have to tweak it a little. So instead of it taking an hour and a half, it now only takes me 45 minutes every 2 weeks. Because we're busy with a lot of stuff to do. Yes?
A business question. So I do a lot of private tutoring on WeChat for business English. What book do you use for your business class, business English class?
I can't remember the title. Essentials of Business.
You could give her your email, Dee. You could give her your email.
Is it all on the presentation?
Actually, go to the next slide. Oh, yeah, contact information on the, right, yeah. There you go, up, go back.
Oh, okay. Pearson has a good inside business series that's in
One more.
conjunction with The Economist. It's great, and it's level. Yeah.
Here's our emails.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And that's on the,
Actually, this page is not in the one that's on the app, so take a picture if you want to contact us.
Yes.
Also, are you, any of your, I think on Quizlet, I'm not positive because it's been a while since I looked at it. On Quizlet, you can give these, put these on the domain, open domain, or you only?
Yeah, it's open domain,
So
yeah.
have you provided yours to check mark to say, yes, anybody can look at these?
Yeah, and I believe my colleague has too. And last year we put some on, so WKU.
Okay.
And you could see, we could find stuff. Yes.
So we briefly saw WeChat, but I'm wondering if any of you have other uses of WeChat that you've done in your classrooms. I just thought it for my students.
There was a presentation in the Electronic Village this afternoon. I have their handout.
I didn't pay $10.
And was Dee the one using WeChat? I forget. Svetlana? Did Dee use the WeChat? She was talking about it.
Oh, yeah, but it doesn't.
Dee, you have a question about WeChat here? Also, another one?
Just other ways you've used it. We could talk there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question here? Yes?
a quick question about the VPN. Are those illegal in China?
Not if you have the right connection like our school does.
Not
But a
if-
lot of people buy
Not if you're
VPNs.
studying at
Yeah.
Xi Jinping's favorite university.
So I taught at, I was in the Emirates for 3 years.
Oh,
Abu
yeah.
Dhabi.
I was also in the Emirates at a point.
Oh,
Yeah.
so, I mean, you really have to be careful. I didn't know how, you know.
China, VPNs seem okay. A lot of people have a private VPN in case the schools goes out.
Okay.
You know, when they had the big Congress last year, we didn't have regular internet connection for 3 weeks. So that was really hard to teach.
And also, since you're affiliated with Keene in New Jersey, doesn't Keene's library have a citation generator that they could use?
I don't know. Zotera's been promoted at our school by the librarian. So that, I don't know, Jill?
Because usually most university libraries have a citation generator.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
A lot of the, like, when you go to do online searches on the journals and stuff, it'll automatically.
Automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them
It
are
gives you
not
like
right.
an
You have to be
MLA, an
careful.
APA, Chicago,
That's
all
true.
that.
Even some of the journals do, because I'm taking an online MA course, and yeah, a lot of it is right
So
there.
I was just wondering why you have a separate one if you can access the Keene library.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can I look at her examples
Oh,
of
yes,
data?
here's deep stuff. There you go.
Okay. I'm at the University of Pittsburgh.
A lot of stuff.
It's inside business.
So the question is about the library.
It's not as intense as
It's
She had asked.
publication.
Yes.
In conjunction with.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of late. I missed like the most part of the speech, but I'm actually from China. No, because I'm looking for a university as a lecturer of English in China, and a lot of our students are kind of looking for native English speakers to study English with. And I've heard people here are teaching English, say through WeChat or other online platforms. I was wondering where your students come from, or how can students like in my university just find resources like that? Because well, there are like big one, but they charge a lot more, and they pay like the teachers little here. So I saw there's like a gap between, you know, that's something I want to.
So I'll back up just about maybe a year or two. So that all the IEPs, the intensive English programs in the States, suffered a huge hit when the Saudi students disappeared. And even now, we've had in Pittsburgh 2 major universities or colleges, their ESL programs, their IEPs just shut down because the Saudi students disappeared.
Oh.
So what happens is all these English teachers, and I don't know if it's happened to where any other teachers here, they have to get, so they can keep their jobs, they have to get like gigs somewhere else, or, you know, temporary jobs or part-time jobs, so they can keep their ESL jobs because they love teaching.
Right.
Plus they're not really qualified to do anything else. So a lot of people have gone online to like, what's it called, Go-Go Kids, Wales, iTalk, VIP Kids, to tutor. The problem is they pay $16 to $25 an hour, which is
Nothing.
Nothing. 16 to 25 an hour.
Okay.
It's crazy. And because I went through one of them, and they are so tightly restricted that you are videotaped and you have a set, boom, 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 boom. You have to teach this and nothing else. So you have no professional wiggle room if a child needs this or a child needs that.
Right.
So what do? What did I do? I started offering, you know, tutoring to some of the Chinese students, or they came to me instead. And they have WeChat groups, they have, and so my name got around. That's the only way to do it. It's by word of mouth that we get the students. So it's difficult because I found that Chinese students, they have wonderful command of the book knowledge, but when they get here, they can't speak. I mean, they can communicate a little bit, but they need interaction. So I would say 90% of my students, they just want to talk.
Right.
So they can get more,
So are you looking for more tutors and you want to know where to find them?
Yes, actually, yes.
okay, the good tutors are not going to be with this online stuff because
Because you don't get paid what you're worth.
Yeah,
And
I
what
would
you're
never go
worth
for that.
is
I
a lot
charge
more,
$50
and
an hour.
the restrictions on the tutors are.
Oh, it's
so
horrible.
Maybe LinkedIn might be a place. I'm in the market and I haven't gotten started yet. So there are, but that's one of the routes that I'm going to take. I want to do it.
Okay.
It doesn't, if the company is charging $50 an hour and I'm getting $18, and I have to do something that somebody else tells me I have to do. I'm a teacher, I know what I do.
It's not being a good teacher. If she can't have the professional wiggle room to like work on phrasal verbs and she has to teach this, this, and this, then it's like you're constricting a certain.
Right.
So we can talk after this if you want.
Right,
and
sure.
get-
But do you think, for example, because, you know, we want to just keep it low for students who cannot afford to pay, like, say, VIP kids, and our students are college students, want to further the education.
Sorry, I
Is
came
there,
in late
like, a
because I was
problem
Oh, that's
with
all right.
you think,
But
like,
I just wanted to
I don't know,
miss the.
students,
Is it Hoelker?
Hoelker. So, yeah, Lana will talk to you about
Okay, well,
Hoelker.
I just wanted to know what that was.
Yeah.
You pick the tutor and hook them up with a good tutor. And you create a consortium. And then you pay this, and you can do that with Skype, because Skype can be.
It's going to have to be on WeChat.
It could be, it does because it's China, because it's China. But can you report video recording session? But maybe.
Is it downloadable? Is it stream downloaded? Oh, okay. Coca.org.
It has to be on WeChat.
I mean, you can scan things, you
Okay.
Sorry, trying to get on there.
Because some of the students just meet native speakers practice, and they don't really have a lot of money to pay. So my question is, do you think that American students who are in the Chinese language program can do this job?
No. What I've
Are
tried to
you in
do
this
is
list
hook
here?
up, like if they're
The top
studying
one or the second?
Mandarin and Pidgin,
Okay,
I've
I
tried
have
to
it,
hook
so
them up
maybe
with,
I'll message you later if I forget.
And they'll trade a half hour and a half hour, but in the
Okay.
end, they don't really know. It's not a long-term deal, put it that way. Plus, they don't have the linguistic background to talk about causal verbs and modals.
Cool, I appreciate it.
They don't have the metacognitive knowledge
They
to
won't
explain
be
the
able to
language.
say why you can't do that. They'll just say, that's the way we say it. Yeah.
So if you're teaching them why and they're looking for conversation partners, then you make some kind of whatever, so she can have a conversation. Or there's a quit. The deal though is that you have the two got to commit to staying in one language instead of in the language.
Right.
So I would suggest that the person if you're there, you might be able to find students on your program.
Where in South Carolina? I went there once when I was a child.
Have some on maybe Gephart. I know
So you do know the Southern accent.
maybe that would be.
You're hearing a lot there.
But we've had trouble.
No, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, the volunteers, they're not, you're
Have a
talking
British
about
accent.
18, 19
Sounds
years old. And there's a 12-hour time difference.
Right.
So if you want it on Sunday morning, they're out of the park at 7. You're not gonna get long-term knowledgeable volunteers to explain what an auxiliary verb is and why can't I use should instead of would.
Yeah.
I just don't think you do that.
Yeah, the reason why I'm thinking this, because now I'm with the Fulbright program. I will be here in the United States in May. And a lot of the students in the Chinese program, in my college, came here as kind of looking for part-time jobs.
Versatility. You can have
Well,
different
and
accents, different Englishes.
I'm now in Florida, and they're okay to say like.
Yeah, my name's Albert. Right now I teach in elementary school in
And I'm
North
saying, hey, I
Carolina.
mean, students in
I'll
China
be
pay
in
that.
Changsha this year to teach you.
You know, there's a need over there. That's why I'm
If you
here.
can get a group of 3,
It's like
then you
west
can get a
from
teacher from a decent teacher
You're near the
for
ocean.
$45, $50 an hour. But remember, there's that time change, so that means, sometimes I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning to connect with a business English student. All right? So, I want to do this, but you're not going to.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm going to with the State Department.
So,
Like to teach them.
and if you do, it's going to be somebody who's brand new out of teaching and,
Are you teaching Chinese?
Sure, I'm teaching Chinese in the States, but after May I will go back to China to teach English in Mental University.
Where are you from?
I'm from Shenyang, the northeast part of China, like Boston, United States. Up north. Very
Stop. Literally.
Not yet.
Literally stop there. Stay there.
I like it. Yes, I taught Shanghai for years.
Okay, I think that's the end sort of our Q&A and sort of small discussion. So have a good time in your small discussion. Hopefully we're useful.
I had a friend named Svetlana in a yoga course I did in India. I like to travel. She's been to Myrtle Beach. She's been